You were a faithful servant, Otto. The crown and the realm, both owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But I can no longer trust your judgment.
This is the moment the mask falls. In the quiet solitude of his chambers, King Viserys I finally severs the strings that have manipulated his reign for decades. This confrontation is often viewed simply as a reaction to a political scandal, the rumors regarding Rhaenyra and Daemon. But a deeper dissection reveals that this is Viserys' single most competent act of self-assertion. It is the moment he transitions from a grief-stricken puppet exploited through political opportunism to an analytically astute monarch who finally sees the truth. It is a scene where the king engages System 2 logic, slow, deliberate analysis, to pierce the decades-long concealment of intention by his closest advisor. He realizes that the man who taught him how to be king was actually teaching him how to serve House Hightower. Today, we will dissect this pivotal scene, analyzing the timeline of the 5 days, the dark wit of the gods, and the devastating realization of the calculated distraction, to understand how Viserys finally settles a debt that can never be repaid. So, as always, I'll talk about all those things that make this scene so powerful in detail. But first, we need some context. The king is alone, and the ghosts of his past are circling. Viserys has spent his reign trying to keep the peace, often willfully blinding himself to the ambitions of those around him. But recently, Otto Hightower has overplayed his hand. After years of loyal service, the Hand of the King brought Viserys news of Rhaenyra's scandalous night with Daemon in a brothel, truth weaponized to destroy the credibility of the king's chosen heir. But instead of destroying Rhaenyra, this aggressive political maneuver has backfired. It has finally forced Viserys to look at his faithful servant with new eyes. He is suddenly seeing the pattern of his entire life, from the grim day his father Balon died, paving the way for Otto's rise, to the calculated distraction of Alicent entering his chambers after Queen Aemma's death. The king realizes that every tragedy in his life has been a stepping stone for the man standing before him. The scene begins with Viserys in a ruminative, melancholic state, reflecting on the death of his father, Balon the Brave. He recounts a specific timeline that becomes the foundation of his accusation.
Your Grace.
5 days.
I'm sorry, Your Grace.
This opening exchange represents a complete inversion of the usual power dynamic between king and hand. Typically, Otto sets the agenda and Viserys responds. Here, Viserys engages what the insights call System 2 thinking, slow, deliberate, analytical logic. Viserys ignores Otto's greeting entirely, launching immediately into a specific number, 5 days. This abruptness throws Otto off balance.
I'm sorry, Your Grace.
Forcing the hand out of his prepared defensive script regarding Rhaenyra and into a state of confusion. The specificity of 5 days proves that Viserys has been brooding on this. He hasn't just been grieving, he has been counting. He is measuring the exact window of time it took for his family's tragedy to become Otto's opportunity. By forcing Otto to ask for clarification, Viserys seizes control of the room. He is no longer the passive king waiting to be guided. He is the interrogator laying a trap.
Though it was some time ago, the details, they fade in memory. My father was a hale and healthy warrior and dragon rider, at the peak of his abilities. Jaehaerys named a great royal hunt to celebrate him being named the Hand of the King. 5 days later, my father lay dead. Tourneys last longer. Balon the Brave, rider of Vhagar, heir to the Iron Throne, dead of a burst belly. The gods have a dark wit.
Viserys juxtaposes the majesty of Valyrian power, dragon rider, heir, with the grotesque banality of a burst belly to expose the terrifying fragility of his dynasty. The biting observation that tourneys last longer acts as a forensic accounting, highlighting the unnatural speed with which the political vacuum opened. By concluding that the gods have a dark wit, Viserys identifies the cruel cosmic joke. The meaningless death of a hero was the necessary precondition for the rise of a bureaucrat. He realizes that his family's grim day was the specific mechanism of Otto's good day, transforming a tragic accident into a clear narrative of calculated opportunism.
It was a grim day. I recall it all too well.
It was a good day for you. Jaehaerys named you hand in Balon's stead.
That's hardly how I viewed it, Your Grace. It was a duty.
Viserys brutally punctures Otto's performance of solemn remembrance by contrasting the grim day of tragedy with the undeniable good day of Otto's promotion. He exposes the transactional core of Otto's rise, forcing the Hand to retreat into the defensive, philosophical shield of duty to mask his opportunism. However, this defense rings hollow. Viserys recognizes that this duty was merely a convenient narrative used to sanitize a predatory seizure of power during a vacuum of royal vulnerability. By rejecting this framing, Viserys redefines Otto's entire tenure not as service, but as a decades-long capitalization on Targaryen misfortune.
You served my grandson nobly in his final days. You are the man that taught me how to be king.
Well, you honor me, Your Grace.
Viserys' admission, "You were the man that taught me how to be king," functions not as praise, but as a devastating indictment of the ideological morality Otto imposed upon him. By acknowledging Otto as the architect of his reign, Viserys realizes his dream was never his own, but a vessel subtly shaped to facilitate Otto's ambition to put his blood on the throne. Philosophically, this is the moment Viserys metaphorically slays the manipulative father figure to reclaim his agency, exposing that this mentorship was never about service, but about molding a pliable ruler. Otto's preening response reveals his fatal arrogance. He mistakes this forensic accounting of manipulation for a compliment, blind to the fact that the king is finally breaking the chains of his own indoctrination.
Just 5 days. You went from being another man in Jaehaerys' court to the second most powerful man in the realm. I wonder, how long did it take you to choose yourself over your king?
Your Grace.
Viserys exposes the Machiavellian efficiency of Otto's rise, using the 5 days timeline to prove that Otto operates on the principle that chaos is not a pit, but a ladder. Philosophically, Viserys is identifying a breach in the social contract of the court. He realizes Otto viewed the monarch not as a sovereign to serve, but as a host organism to feed upon for advancement. The question, "How long did it take you to choose yourself?" suggests that Otto's service was never true loyalty, but rather a long con of enlightened self-interest, where the Hand's prosperity was inversely proportional to the king's tragedy. The emotional shift in the scene moves from historical analysis to a sharp, present-day realization regarding Queen Alicent. This is the straw that broke the camel's back, not the political scandal, but the personal betrayal.
I will never recover from Emma's death. But Alicent, she took me through the worst of my grief. She was a calculated distraction. I only now realize how well calculated it was.
Viserys' admission, "I will never recover from Emma's death, she was a calculated distraction," marks the moment he finally admits to a state of permanent trauma, acknowledging that he was psychologically compromised when he married Alicent. He realizes that Otto exploited the king's deepest personal pain as a currency for political gain, effectively monetizing his grief to buy access to the throne. By exposing this, Viserys strips away the illusion of romance to reveal the Machiavellian reality. Otto did not attack the king's strength, but weaponized his vulnerability, turning the private sanctuary of mourning into a backdoor for usurpation, disguised as empathy. This redefines the marriage not as a union, but as a hostile takeover of the royal bloodline, proving that Otto viewed Viserys' broken heart merely as an unguarded gate.
Is an absurdity. The Queen loves you, as I know you love her.
Your interests no longer align with those of the realm. Your judgment has been compromised.
Otto desperately attempts to remystify his political maneuvering by invoking love, trying to shield his calculated ambition behind the sentimental sanctity of the marriage. Viserys, however, refuses to engage in this emotional theater, countering with a detached, clinical diagnosis. Your interests no longer align with those of the realm. Philosophically, this is the ultimate bureaucratic condemnation. Viserys identifies a fatal conflict of interest, realizing that Otto's judgment is not flawed by incompetence, but corrupted by a private agenda that has cannibalized his public duty to the crown. Otto attempts one final defense, appealing to the philosophical duty of the Hand.
A loyal Hand must tell his king a discomforting truth from time to time, Your Grace. If he doesn't, He's failed as a servant.
Philosophically, Otto is correct. A hand must be the voice of ruthless realism. However, his argument fails because his judgment has been compromised by self-interest. Viserys understands that Otto's report on Rhaenyra was not an act of service, but an aggressive strategic move. The argument collapses because Otto has violated the fundamental axiom of service. A servant cannot have a higher loyalty to his own blood than to the state. Viserys sees that Otto is hiding behind the definition of his office to justify a conflict of interest, realizing that a faithful servant does not orchestrate the very crises he claims to be solving. Viserys uses the formal language of statecraft to mask a brutal termination, acknowledging the magnitude of Otto's influence only to declare it a fatal liability.
You were a faithful servant, Otto. The crown and the realm both owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But I can no longer trust your judgment.
Viserys employs the economic metaphor of an unpayable debt to signal that the political account is overdrawn. The debt is not just owed for service, but implicitly acknowledges the irreversible damage Otto's ambition has inflicted on the family structure. Philosophically, this is the king drawing a hard line between capability and trust. He admits Otto was a faithful servant to the office, but a traitor to the person of the king. By stating he can no longer trust your judgment, Viserys diagnoses the corruption at the heart of their relationship. Otto's counsel is no longer objective statecraft, but a compromised vehicle for Hightower advancement. Viserys realizes that a servant whose private interests eclipse the public good is not an asset, but an existential threat to the realm.